This is CBS.
Here at the Airport Plaza Hotel in Reno, Nevada, the National Transportation Safety Board investigators are just wrapping up a meeting in preparation for a news conference and briefing for reporters as they reach their very first conclusions about what may have caused Flight 203 to crash, killing a number of Minnesotans at the end of this city's airport.
Rescue efforts are underway in Honduras tonight, where a military transport plane based in Wisconsin has gone down in heavy seas.
And we'll continue our cover story on the illegal gun trade with a look at why the weapons are such a hot item for burglars. All of this coming up on tonight's 10 p.m. report.
Heavenly Bodies, the hot dance movie with the high-power music of the Dazz Band, Cheryl Lynn, Bonnie Pointer, Sparks, The Tubes, and Dwight Twilley.
You're off.
Heavenly Bodies, the dancing, rockin', reach for a dream movie that won't stop until it takes you to the top. Heavenly Bodies, rated R.
Starts Friday. Check newspapers for a theater near you.
After years of taking Minnesota winter seriously, more and more people are having fun with it.
I love it.
Fantastic.
You're never too young to explore Minnesota. She's great.
Now, isn't it time you had some fun with winter? Call the Minnesota Office of Tourism for free information. 1-800-652-9747.
Sure beats watching commercials.
When you want to make an important long-distance call, you don't want to wait around till the rates go down. The time is now. You see, the phone company saves you some money when they want to. But Sprint saves you more money when you want to. You feel like calling, you pick up the phone every day of the week. And at night and on the weekends, when the phone company's rates are low, Sprint's are even lower. So what's the right time to call Sprint? Right now. Call Sprint. Find out about it.
Serving and informing the Twin Cities for 4 decades. This is WCCO Television, Minneapolis, St. Paul. And now, Dave Moore, Pat Miles, Mike Fairborn, and Mark Rosen bring you Channel 4's 10 p.m. report.
It is now more than 40 hours since Galaxy Airlines Flight 203 crashed and burned just after takeoff from Reno. Tonight, the investigation continues with these new developments. The National Transportation Safety Board is about to hold a news conference concerning the disaster. The first lawsuits have been filed by relatives of some of the victims, and tapes have been released containing the final words between the doomed flight's pilot and the Reno control tower. And so again, the crash of Flight 203 and the deaths of its passengers dominates our 10 p.m. report tonight. Pat?
As he has been for the past 2 days, Don Shelby is in Reno keeping track of the latest developments for us. He is standing by now live with a report. Don?
Pat, as we said at the beginning of the show tonight, we have set up shop here at the Plaza Hotel just across the street from the airport, where the NTSB has been meeting all day to come up with their initial, very first conclusions that they feel comfortable in presenting to the press as to what might have led to the crash of Flight 203. It is probably impossible at this point to expect anything concrete to be said by any of the investigators, but there can be some surmise as bits and pieces of facts seem to emerge as the investigators have begun clearing away the wreckage. One of the things that was mentioned today by Chairman Jim Burnett of the NTSB is that 2 of the propellers from that 4-engine craft have been found, and we had heard earlier today from Sheriff Vin Swinney that they had found those propellers a great distance away from the original crash site, from a quarter to 1/2 mile away toward the end of the runway, which makes it appear that the aircraft may have lost its propellers before it impacted 2.5 miles outside of the runway. We will not know exactly the content of the NTSB's briefing tonight. They have just concluded their meeting. They are preparing their briefing, and that will be going on for the rest of the evening. We'll be reporting back as we find out some of the things that they're going to be saying. The NTSB officials also announced today that they have recovered the black boxes, the so-called black boxes. Of course, they're not black boxes. They are orange and yellow, so they can be easily found by investigators. Those boxes are the cockpit voice recorder and the flight data recorder, and they will present information to the investigators the very last moments of the flight of 203. It will be taken back to the lab for analysis in Washington, D.C. It will be 60 days before we know what was said on those last moments. Today, the agency released the final moments of the communication between the pilot of 203, that Galaxy flight, Electra 188, and the tower here at Reno Cannon International Airport. And the chilling recordings that we heard today raised as many questions as people hoped they might answer.
See, 203, like to make a left downwind. We got to get back on the ground.
Galaxy 203, say again?
Yeah, sure, we'd like to make a left downwind. Got a heavy vibration in the aircraft.
Galaxy 203, roger. Maintain VFR and left downwind for runway 16 right. And do you need the equipment?
Affirmative.
Roger, how many people on board and same amount of fuel remaining?
68 and we got 12 fuel.
68 people and 1,200 pounds of fuel.
And that is the end of the recording as it was released by the NTSB and the FAA tower today. Among the questions the tape raises is why, when the pilot asked permission to make a left downwind turn, did the plane apparently make some sort of right-hand turn as it went toward Highway 395. The original death toll, of course, was set Monday at 69. Today, it was officially lowered by the Washoe County coroner to the number 67. And as you know, Galaxy Airline attorneys have already claimed that there were only 64 deaths. But if you listen closely to what the pilot said on the recording, he said that there were 68 passengers aboard. That would mean that we would presume that to mean not including the crew, which amounted to 6. That would mean 74 individuals may have been aboard that aircraft rather than 71. And since just 3 survived, that would make the death toll even higher than originally thought. But again, no one has any firm numbers. Everybody seems to be working with a different set of facts regarding the exact numbers. One of the survivors, miraculously, was able to describe the final moments of that crash today. Tony Vigneri was the only television reporter allowed to sit in with the victim, and it was an amazing story, Tony.
It certainly was, Don. I was able to talk to 17-year-old George Lamson Jr. earlier today in his hospital room. Lamson is a senior at Cretin High School, and for what he's experienced, he's in great shape. A miracle patient, doctors say. Lamson says he's stiff, he's sore, but he feels pretty good. The burns on his face don't hurt too much, he says, but the real pain is recalling the crash.
We just took off, and it was smooth, and all of a sudden we hit some turbulence, and then we just started turning. And I didn't know why we were turning, but he told us, what I heard on the TV set is we were turning towards the airport. And he didn't tell us that. And all I saw was sky out my window, and then all of a sudden I saw that the ground was coming closer.
He remembers upon impact, he went flying through fire and debris, but ended up still buckled tight in his seat, away from the wreckage.
I thought I was dead, and I didn't know if I was alive or not, but I realized that I got up, I ran away, and the plane blew up and knocked me down, and I ran as fast as I could and got out of there.
Lamson says he went screaming for help. He was dazed, his face burning. This afternoon, with his mother and sister at his side, he said he's lucky, very, very lucky, to have survived. Lamson says he has no fear of flying and would fly again, but he admitted he felt a bit strange about flying home on Flight 203.
I felt kind of shaky about that airplane. I never liked propeller airplanes. I liked jets, you know. It sounded okay. It wasn't really like it was in rough shape when we were flying it. It's just the feeling of flying in one of those planes. It just scared me.
Lamson says he got to know most of the people on the plane. Many were friends of his father. George Lamson Sr. tonight remains in critical condition with head and chest injuries and burns on 15% of his body. His wife Adrienne spent time with him earlier today.
I was shocked when I saw him. Can't lie about that. But today when I seen him, I'm beginning to start to accept it better. But I know that he's going to get better. He's not going to always look like that.
The third survivor, Robert Miggins of Wayzata, remains in critical condition tonight at a Las Vegas hospital, and Don Miggins' wife and his 3 children are at his side.
All right, Tony, thank you very much for bringing us that story. And this evening, authorities are expected to reopen a portion of the highway, that 4-lane highway at the south end of the runway here at Reno. It has been closed, of course, since Monday because the wreckage was strewn across it. It blocked it. Authorities also removed more bodies from the wreckage today. All of those bodies have been taken now to a temporary morgue set up at the county fairgrounds at the north end of Reno. And the coroner said today that he simply will not reveal the identities of any of the victims. For 3 or 4 days, he will not reveal any names of any victims identified until all of the victims of Crash 203 have been identified. That means the agonizing wait for people, like a fellow we met at the very outset of this coverage, Bud Romaker of Garrison, Minnesota. The agony for Bud and his wife Iona will continue. Romaker believes that he lost his daughter in that crash, and tonight Debbie Ely visited with Bud Romaker. Tell us about your visit.
Well, Don, what began as a brief visit to the city has turned into a long wait for him. The Romakers still don't know for sure whether their daughter is dead or alive. Bud and his wife were vacationing in Reno. It was last Friday when their daughter, Karen Weaver, and her boyfriend, Don Spector, decided to surprise them and meet them here at MGM Grand. When Bud learned of the plane crash yesterday and knew his daughter could be on that plane, he went to the scene.
I just thought that maybe there might be a possibility that we could get in there at the wreck, and maybe, just maybe, that there was our girl, our daughter was there, and we could probably identify her.
But the authorities suggested that there was nothing he could do, so he went to his son's home in nearby Sparks, Nevada. There he spent a day talking to friends back in Minnesota and watching television news accounts.
Now that could be a problem. I've got with me a model.
Well, I'm just all mixed up. I don't know what to do, and there isn't much that we can do until we find out the identification of our daughter.
Today, Romaker's wife and another daughter returned to Minnesota, but Bud has decided to stay on to bring Karen home. The tears well up in his eyes as he talks about her, a working mother of 3.
She was so happy the last couple of months that everything was kind of falling in place, and we were very happy, too, for her, because it seemed that she had more or less got rid of her.
Don, police are advising Minnesotans who think that they have friends or relatives who were on that plane to stay home. There is absolutely nothing that they can do. They're using dental records right now, and in some cases, fingerprints, to identify the deceased.
All right, Debbie, thank you very much. Debbie, who's just left the news conference, reports to us that one of the things the NTSB has said, as we expected they would say, is that all 4 propellers on the Electra 188 Galaxy Flight 203 were on the plane at the point of impact. That is important for those people trying to investigate and come up with some conclusions about why it might have crashed, because it was believed that one of the propellers may have disintegrated on takeoff, knocking another propeller off. This entire controversy about why it crashed may revolve around the entire propeller issue. It may be days before any of the relatives back in Minnesota or other parts of the United States from which these people hailed will be able to know whether for sure that their grief process can begin, because the identification process may take so long. And it will likely be months before we know what caused this crash. We will be here again reporting tomorrow and the day after if necessary until we can report the conclusion of the story here of Flight 203. Back to you.
Thanks, Don. Just one day after the crash, lawsuits are being filed by families of the victims.
Well, 2 suits were filed today, and they are expected to be the first of many stemming from this accident. Trish Van Pilsum reports.
That lawsuits are being filed is not surprising. Disasters like these nearly always end in litigation. What may be surprising is how soon it's happened. The victims have not yet officially been identified. But attorneys for the survivors say they get a strategic edge by jumping in so quickly.
As well as I know Margaret, if you knew her as well as I did, you'd know that this is exactly what she would want to have done. She would want to go after the persons responsible for her death and see to it that her survivors are taken care of.
Stone King today filed a lawsuit asking for an excess of $50,000 for the family of Margaret and Richard Jasperson of Edina. His firm will represent at least 8 other families. They're suing Galaxy Airlines, Lockheed, the company that made the plane, Caesar's Palace, and High Thayer, who organized the junket, and the yet unknown company that maintained the plane. A second lawsuit was filed today on behalf of the family of 28-year-old Binyam Medhani. It asks $15 million from Galaxy and Lockheed. Local attorneys working on that case have called in a national expert who handles nothing but plane accident litigation. Lee Kreindler says he's never lost a case against Lockheed.
There's enough to suspect structural failure of sorts, whether it's the aircraft or the engine-propeller combination. It's a little early to say.
Of course, nobody knows yet exactly what caused the crash, and these lawyers concede they've done no research into the accident yet, but they're confident that Lockheed and the airline are at fault, saying accidents don't just happen, something goes wrong. Trish Van Pilsum, WCCO Television News, the Twin Cities.
For the families, of course, certainly nothing can be as frustrating and as anxiety-ridden as the delay in releasing the official list of the dead. As Don mentioned, there may be several more days before such a list is released, but a partial, unofficial list of the victims has been compiled.
This is Michigan, where fresh, clean snow quietly blankets the memories of seasons past, where an aura of excitement drifts freely in the crisp, sparkling air, where trails twist and turn through frosted forests spirited with life, where white-carpeted hills glide forever and sunsets last a lifetime. This is Michigan in winter.
Yes, Michigan.
There's something super in the air. Dodge Aries Super K. The automatic transmission's coming free to the dealer from the factory. Maybe right in your hands at no extra charge. Aries Super K. Newly restyled, 6-passenger comfort, front-wheel drive, and exceptional value. And we back it up with our 550 protection plan. The Super Ks. Now, the automatic transmission could come along for the ride for no extra charge.
See your Viking Land Dodge dealer today.
What does it take to excel?
I know the deadline. You'll get it tomorrow.
It takes speed, reliability, economy. It takes express mail next day service from the post office. Our 2-pound pack is just $9.35 overnight. And we deliver over 100,000 packages on time every day.
Yes, we got them. Oh, and Jerry, thanks.
Express mail service. We deliver excellence for less.
It's January boat show time again at the Minneapolis Auditorium, and the place to be to preview all the new 85 boating equipment. So be the first to see the new cruisers, runabouts, pontoons, fishing boats, canoes, and sailboats of all sizes, plus motors, lifts, docks, and accessories. Remember, if it floats, it's on display at the boat show, Minneapolis Auditorium, January 23rd through the 27th. So come on down.
Like much about Flight 203, details of the airline that operated it remain sketchy tonight.
But some of the company's operations have been revealed in court records, and they indicate that Galaxy Airlines had 3 liens or financial claims filed against it in the company's home county. Details from Alan Cox.
One claim was from the IRS for $55,000. Another, for state unemployment premiums, was settled. A Florida official says it was the kind of claim that, in most cases, indicates a shortage of cash at a company. Critics charge that financially weaker airlines are one of the effects of airline deregulation, and that a troubled carrier will make some of its first cuts in its aircraft maintenance program. Airlines and the government say that's not true, and the FAA says Galaxy had no record of safety or maintenance problems. Galaxy leased the plane that went down from a Virginia company, the latest in a list of 7 owners, a group of air carriers and aircraft brokers stretching back to American Airlines, which put the plane in service 25 years ago next month. The FAA says its records for the last 5 years show fewer reports of service difficulties on the Galaxy plane than the average for Electras. The aircraft's maker says properly maintained Electras remain airworthy.
If you were to compare it with the safety record of other commercial airliners that have been in service for many years, and the Electra has been in service now for more than 25 years, I think you'd find that it compares very favorably.
Local pilots who once flew Electras for Northwest agree with Lockheed. One told us it was the best plane ever made with propellers. Another liked the spacious, quiet interior and said if there was ever a cockpit you wanted to retire in, that was it. Alan Cox, WCCO Television News, Minneapolis.
For the friends and relatives of those who died on Flight 203, the healing process is likely to be a slow one. Recovery from grief may take a full year, according to a psychologist who has studied reactions to disaster. Karen Boros looks at how those left behind begin to deal with death.
I know that door's going to open and Louie's going to just come in.
To deny that an accidental death has occurred is a fairly common phenomena, a form of self-protection.
View the other person as still being alive, as having not been a part of the accident, or somehow imagining that the accident didn't occur at all.
Psychologist Butcher says that as time passes, denial will become more difficult. Short-term plans that would have included the deceased, such as a simple dinner with friends, will be changed and give way to reality.
I was going on this trip, but at the last minute didn't go.
For those who might have died, there will probably be feelings of guilt coupled with a sense of relief. In the case of a long-term illness, friends and relatives have time to adjust to death. But in an accident, another element comes into play when part of the healing process becomes fixing blame.
Once the realization that the person is lost and will no longer be with us, then there's often the anger and the furor about why did this have to happen.
Even though the crash occurred in Reno, the Twin Cities Airport Disaster Program can help families and relatives of victims deal with their loss by referring them to area psychologists, noting that it is critical for those who need help to get that help within the next 6 weeks. Karen Boris, WCCO Television News, Minneapolis.
And as Karen mentioned, the airport medical clinic can refer those seeking counseling to a qualified psychologist.
There is news of yet another plane crash tonight. A U.S. Air Force transport with 21 people aboard crashed off the coast of Honduras today. The plane, based out of Milwaukee, was on a routine airlift at the time. 5 of the crew members are believed to be from southwestern Wisconsin, but none has been identified yet, and since bad weather is hampering the search efforts, there's also no word on the status of those passengers or what caused the crash. It's been exactly 12 years since the Supreme Court handed down its decision to legalize abortions. The anniversary was marked today in St. Paul, and as in many capitals across the country, with demonstrations. Some 2,500 adults and children braved sub-zero wind chill to hear organizers of the anti-abortion movement claim they will never abandon the fight. They also picketed outside heavily guarded offices of Planned Parenthood in St. Paul. The Minnesota Senate approved today a farm package which includes a 120-day moratorium on farm foreclosures. It's a $9.2 million measure. It's the first farm relief bill of the legislative session, and now it goes to the House. Pat?
For 180 Share employees, it is going to be a long night and an early morning. Employees from 6 Share clinics are preparing tonight for a 6 a.m. strike against the health company. Negotiations between Share and its clerical workers, x-ray technicians, and registered nurses broke down this afternoon. However, Share physicians and other employees will be on the job tomorrow, and the company says health care to its members will not be affected by that strike. Mike Fairborn here to give us an update on the weather situation.
Well, we're on a roll. We're now about 50 hours since we were below zero. So we've been above zero for 50 hours.
Somehow I haven't forgotten, though, that chill.
I don't think anybody's going to forget it for a while. Today, though, we were back up into the 20s, 25 degrees, 4 degrees above the average for the date. 12 degrees was the low. We're not expecting temperatures to drop below zero in the near future, so we're going to continue with our mild January weather. A trace of snow and some flurries, but still down in the southeast, record lows, 22 of them last night. If you count those dots down in Florida, Florida suffered the most, and it looks like they're going to again tonight. High temperatures today were in the 40s and 50s, so they did recover a little bit today, had a little respite, but tonight temperatures are already dropping back off into the teens and the 20s down there, about what we had for high temperatures today. Right now, down in the southeast, this is 18 degrees at Knoxville, Tennessee, 27 in Atlanta, Georgia, 34 down in Jacksonville, Florida. So they're going to drop below freezing one more night tonight before they slowly begin to warm back up. Tomorrow into the 30s and the 40s for lows. A couple of little weather disturbances, one to the southwest of us, not doing much but producing some clouds and a few sprinkles. The one up to the northwest of us producing some flurries and some clouds over us, and that may persist for at least 24 hours, so throughout the day tomorrow, watch for a little bit of sunshine and a little bit of flurry activity, kind of mixed off and on. Otherwise, kind of an absence of weather systems. Another little low moving in from the southwest, doing nothing but producing a few scattered showers and maybe an isolated flurry or two over the mountainous areas. Meantime, back up into the 50s and the 60s for the southeast, but still 40s all the way down to the Gulf Coast, parts of Louisiana and Texas. And we'll see temperatures again back up into the 20s here over the upper Midwest. Right now, partly cloudy with 18 degrees, 67% humidity. The wind chill is still 8 below with winds out of the west at 15 and 3001 with a falling barometer. Forecast, variable clouds, chance of a few isolated flurries. Winds out of the west-northwest at 10 to 20 with a low of around 12. Partial sunshine, a few flurries tomorrow, a high of 25. Winds staying with us at 10 to 20 miles an hour out of the northwest. Clear to partly cloudy tomorrow night. Still no below zero readings in sight. 7 degrees for a low, and for Thursday, clear to partly cloudy with a high again right around 25 degrees. Popular number this week. Our extended forecast calls for partly cloudy conditions. Little cooler on Friday, dropping down to the teens for highs, maybe even below zero Friday night, but for Saturday and Sunday, back up into the 20s.
All right, and that's not too bad, is it?
Not bad at all.
All right, thanks, Mike. Well, as much as jewelry and money, the gun is the burglar's most precious loot. Dave Nimmer makes that discovery in part 2 of his cover story. That's up next.
Boy, it's great to be on vacation.
Yeah, and we never go on vacation without Hertz.
I wouldn't risk my vacation with an unreliable rent-a-car company.
And Hertz affordable weekly rates save me money.
But people say Hertz is more reliable.
But now, Hertz costs less money.
Arnie, more reliable.
Less money.
Arnold, more reliable.
Less money.
Hertz Affordable Florida, only $79 a week. Now the rent-a-car company that gives you more is less.
Less money.
Boy, they let anybody in this place.
These guys are lighting up.
Wouldn't it be great if there was a soybean herbicide that worked one pass or two? That it controlled grasses and tough weeds like foxtail, pigweed, lamb's quarters, and help stop nightshade? One that'd keep on working right through harvest and yet not carry over to next season's crops. Well, now there is. It's called Sonalan from Elanco. Sonalan gives you season-long grass and weed control at a reasonable cost. Soybeans and Sonalan, they're made for each other.
Okay, Louise, we're going to a costume party.
Who are you going as?
Snow White.
Tonight at 10:30 on WCCO television.
Burglary is the most common felony crime in Minnesota, and one of the reasons for that is guns.
Well, it's not that the burglars have guns. Their victims do, and the burglars want them. Tonight, in part 2 of our cover story, Dave Nimmer offers a case in point.
Truck was parked here, facing south.
Vern Broughton came home about 7 one December evening to find his house broken into and his guns stolen.
Evidently, they just broke the window and reached in, flipped the deadbolt, and they got in the house.
Police quickly arrested the juvenile suspects and recovered Broughton's truck, but not the guns.
And in 40 minutes, they had unloaded everything they stole out of the house. They had stripped the vehicle, radio, speakers, everything out of it, stolen everything I had behind the seat as far as tools, or in 40 minutes.
And the guns were gone.
And the guns were gone, no trace of them, never heard a word about them.
And most victims never hear a word about them. The serial numbers are rarely recorded. The burglars know that, and they also know where to find them. Consider the 2 burglars on the right in this police surveillance picture. They admitted to pulling more than 700 burglaries. And here they tell an undercover policeman that guns are a high priority. Not only that, they know how to use them.
You said you'd shoot somebody ready to go to jail.
Yeah, I would. With what? That's the first thing I hear. When I go to the house, I know exactly where to find the guns.
Really?
I will load them immediately. Look in the closets for the guns are right in the gun shelf.
And where did Vern Broughton keep his 2 favorite shotguns?
I had it right in the closet. Wasn't concealed or anything like that.
Authorities say most gun owners are like Broughton. They don't try to hide their guns or take out parts, and they become likelier and likelier targets.
One of the bigger gun rip-offs in Minneapolis history occurred here on James Avenue North about 9 months ago. The owner of the gun shop, who operated his business out of his house here, was robbed and bound. He lost more than 50 guns, and those guns included rifles, shotguns, and handguns. The case was closed, however, within 3 weeks, and 3 suspects were arrested.
One of them is now doing 5 years here in Stillwater. His name's Billy Ray, and he claims this was his first gun deal. But his inexperience didn't prevent him from getting rid of the guns in a hurry.
Usually somebody on the street just want them or something, or if you find some fence or something, I suppose.
But how long did it actually take?
Within 3 or 4 days, something like that.
And the reason the guns move so quickly, as anyone in here knows too well, is that guns are good street currency.
These days they are, because they're harder to get. And the law now, they're saying they're trying to ban it. Trying to ban handguns and rifles and keep them, from people. But like back in the 60s and 70s, you could get them easy. But now they're getting hard to get. That's why you get high bucks for them.
He also got hard time. But he might have just as easily got away with it, except for a couple of savvy Minneapolis detectives who enlisted the help of the Federal Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms Division. Not only do the feds have firearms expertise, they also have subpoena power that makes reluctant witnesses take note.
The mother of one of the people that was involved had actually seen some of the guns and totally refused to admit that A, her son had been involved, B, that she had seen the guns. When she was served the federal grand jury subpoena, she thought about it for, I'd say about an hour and a half. And then she called us and said that she wanted to come in and tell us what had really transpired, and she did.
Now the relationship between the feds and local police has been formalized with the formation of a special weapons task force. With Paul Adelman and Jeff Coffer, I'm Dave Nimmer, WCCO Television News.
Tomorrow night, Dave's series on guns will examine the Federal Local Weapons Task Force, which has been piling up some impressive arrest numbers. Apparently, record-setting is not a ticket into football's Hall of Fame. Franz Tarkington found out the hard way today. The story leads Mark Rosen's sports report up next.
Winter, it hits hard. Fight back with a Snapper snow thrower, armed with a tough steel auger. A discharge chute that adjusts 200 degrees to toss snow out of your way. Buy now and get a free electric starter and no payments for 90 days. The Snapper Snow Thrower. It makes you want to go get winter.
I get the Snapper.
Dishes for this week, I get the Snapper. Snapper Snow Thrower is available at Cherokee Hardware, LTG Trails, and Larson Hardware, Hank.
My dandruff shampoo is good.
Maybe you should try something else. My dandruff shampoo really works.
Maybe you should try something else, like Selsun Blue.
Doctors and pharmacists recommend Selsun Blue more than all other leading brands combined. It's #1.
What that means to you is no leading brand gets rid of dandruff better than Selsun Blue. Ask your doctor or pharmacist, or try it yourself.
That's all the proof you'll need. Selsun Blue. It's #1.
A lot of people think Federal Express carries only little packages. Our couriers would probably disagree with this.
It's not the first time Francis Tarkington has failed to make the Football Hall of Fame, which that ought to improve or increase his credentials for next year, I would say.
I think everyone thought he was going to be a shoo-in this year. I don't know, maybe he's being punished for hosting That's Incredible. It could be.
Eastern sports writers don't like him, I've understood.
Well, I think that's what I was just going to get into. It's, yep, I'm going to review those who did make it in a minute, but you have to wonder, there's more to it than just his ability on the football field. I think maybe some Eastern writers are right, Dave, have it out for Tarkington from his days with the Giants, or perhaps it's because Tarkington spent the majority of his career in the hinterlands here in Minnesota and never won a Super Bowl. But you're talking about a guy who holds a half dozen NFL passing records. Politics, that's the name of the game when you have a player of Tarkington's caliber not in the Hall of Fame. Sid Hartman of the Star and Tribune is the area's voter in the Hall. He was sure Tarkington would get in, but obviously others didn't feel that way. I think Sid's probably more upset about it than Fran. So Sir Francis will have to wait another year. Certainly an injustice. Here are those who did make it into the Hall of Fame. Commissioner Pete Rozelle will be inducted into the executive branch of the Hall. Now, two quarterbacks, Joe Namath and Roger Staubach, did garner enough votes. This was Staubach's first year of eligibility, as it was for the Juice, O.J. Simpson, who was the first NFL running back to gain 2,000 yards in a season. 62-year-old Frank Gatzke will be enshrined in the old-timers division. Gatzke anchored the Cleveland Browns offensive line during the 1940s and 50s. Herb Brooks made it clear that his old buddy Lou Nanne has not contacted him about any job with the North Stars, including the head coaching position. Brooks did say it's been difficult coaching in New York with his family here and doesn't want that situation to exist again.
Obviously, I want to try to reacquaint myself with children, family responsibilities, but my next job will really take those responsibilities. You know, I'll have to consider those very deeply.
Do you want to get back in the NHL? You want to coach again?
Well, I'll never say never, and it's a thrill to coach the National Hockey League. It's just it's unbelievable, you know, chemistry, and to say no, I don't know what's going to happen, but never say never, and if the situation is right, yes, I would like to.
It could be right here sometime. Right now, I'm not sure if Bill Walsh was coaching the North Stars would make any difference. The team is really struggling. The Stars could use a big win over Pittsburgh at the Met tomorrow night. In the NHL this evening, Montreal over Hartford 8-5. Toronto and Quebec played to a 2-all overtime tie. Detroit over the Islanders 5-4. The Rangers at Buffalo postponed because of that snowstorm. The Strikers are in a North Star-like slump. Tonight's 5-4 loss to Los Angeles leaves Minnesota with a 2-6 record this month. Los Angeles was out for revenge after losing to the Strikers last week. Tonight, the Lasers came out firing at the Sports Center. When Stuart Lee scored his second goal, L.A. led 5-1. The Strikers' problem is simple. They play hard, but don't have enough big scorers. Tonight, the Strikers rallied for 2 goals in the final 3 minutes, but had to pull the goalie to do it. They lost 5-4. They play the Cosmos on Friday night. One big high school hockey score tonight. Burnsville defeated Minnetonka by the score of 7-3.
Ooh, that is big. Thank you, Mark. That's it for tonight's 10 p.m. report.
We'll be back again tomorrow. Hope to see you then. Good night, everyone.
Thomas Edison predicted